I watched them laugh while they chained my hands and threw me into shark water, toxic yellow wrong, and the camera never stopped recording. The man in charge thought he was filming an execution no one would ever see, but he had no idea he was broadcasting his own sentence. If it were you sinking in that poison just for telling the truth, would you still believe in justice? My name is Naomi Carter, former Navy SEAL, former federal technical advisor, black woman, whistleblower, target. Depending on who you listen to, I was either the hero who crawled out of hell or the monster they needed you to fear. Tonight, I'm going to tell you what really happened. Not the chopped up clips, not the headlines, not the spin, just me talking to you like a person who went under and came back different. It started out there in the deep wave exclusion zone at high noon when the water turns white and the sky is nothing but heat. I was on the deck of a Helian Defense Patrol vessel, wrists swollen inside steel cuffs that had been on long enough to carve their name into my skin. Salt, sweat, dried blood, that smell never really leaves. 3 officers around me relaxed like they were early to a barbecue. One of them scrolling his phone, one of them already recording. And then there was Lieutenant Harold Ridgewell. You know that type. The badge is 8% authority and 92% insecurity. He walked slow boots, clicking sunglasses on bottle of water in his hand, letting it slosh against the plastic as he stared down at me. "Thirsty, sweetheart?" he asked, tilting it just enough that the cold spilled across the hot steel inches from my knees. America's generous like that. We give people like you more due process than you deserve. The guys behind him laughed. One lifted his phone like he was capturing a funny prank. "This is going to be wild, boss. Real lesson tape." Ridgewell put his boot on my chain and leaned in. "Special forces, huh, ex-SEAL? You thought being a black hero was going to protect you. Ocean's no stage for black heroes. Out here, the law is me." He wanted a reaction. They always do. He wanted fear tears, a plea he could play back later when people asked why. Instead, I looked past his sunglasses right into the phone camera, my voice torn but steady. "You're recording your own sentence." Quick pattern interrupt. He flinched. Just a flicker. Then he laughed big and loud for the audience. "You think anyone's ever going to see this?" he said. "By sunset, sweetheart, you're a rumor." He pulled his taser, pressed it to my neck, hit the trigger. Pain ripped down my spine, body locked. I remember smelling my own skin burn, hearing one of the other officers mutter, "Jesus, she's still upright." I was. Barely. "The water will finish the job," Ridgewell said. "The water always does." He grabbed my hair, dragged me. Every inch of deck shredded my knees, but my head was somewhere else, counting devices, counting angles. Phone, GoPro on his chest, boat cams. I recognized the hardware. I recognized a little blinking icon on that GoPro too. Emergency escalation channel. Custom coded years back by a technical advisor they trusted. Yeah, that was me. He hauled me up onto the rail. The deep wave water below churned thick and off color like the ocean had food poisoning. I knew this zone. I had signed off on papers calling it a controlled disposal corridor. I believed them then. Believed the numbers, the models, the promises. "Any last words?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, tasting blood. "Coward with a gun." He smiled tight mean and kicked. Hitting that water felt like smashing face first into a live wire. It wrapped around me cold and burning at the same time, forcing the air out of my lungs in one brutal punch. The weight of the chain yanked me down, light snapping away above me in seconds. That part in the viral clip where you hear the splash and then nothing. For me, that nothing was a roar, and under that roar a hum. I recognized it before I understood it. Mechanical, steady wrong for an empty ocean. Deep wave hardware breathing below the surface. Barrels, pumps, vents. The skeleton of Helian's secrets. Then I saw it. A shadow rising. Too big. Too fast. Not moving like a regular shark. Its skin was burned in patches. Flesh fused with dull metal. One eye cloudy and wrong. Surge biotests. The rumors I used to scroll past in redacted documents. Now circling me. I want you to understand this clearly. I was drowning, cuffed, disoriented, and a weaponized monster was coming straight at me. This is not a movie moment where the hero poses. This is a moment where instinct slams into training and survival does the math. It lunged. I twisted my shoulders, let the chain slip just enough, let its charge pull me past its snout instead of into it. My fingers found that chain, looped it around my forearm, and as it swept by, I drove rusted steel up into its bad eye. There was this thick, wet crunch, this pulse of filthy blood and chemical sludge, and the water turned dark. The shark thrashed, and the force threw me sideways, right into a blinking red light. GoPro, still on, still sending on a channel built to bypass interference and route straight into federal infrastructure. And that's the first twist they never meant to show you when Ridgewell turned my death into a trophy video. He also turned his crime into a live confession. I tore my wrists until the cuffs sliced through skin. I slowed my heartbeat the way they taught us in surf torture training, let the buoyancy shift, use the shark's body as cover. A pipe, a current, a maintenance shaft. Deepwave wasn't just water, it was an old machine with forgotten exits. I found one. When I finally burst into air inside a corroded tunnel hatch, I wasn't some triumph poster. I was half-cooked, shaking, burned, and furious. I crawled out onto a nameless strip of rock and sand that stank like oil and old lies, and there was no one there. No ship, no chopper, no sirens. They logged me missing during escape. Case closed. I survived on that island for days. Hooking fish with twisted chain, collecting rain in a busted drum, stitching rags into shade while my skin peeled and stiffened. At night, I walked the shoreline and wrote names in the sand with what little strength I had. People we'd lost to this kind of quiet violence. People no one apologized for. You ever had that moment where it's just you and the universe and you're realizing the system you protected put a target on your back the second you said, "This isn't right," you know what I mean? On day 7, I collapsed near the surf, fingers still gripping that rusted link like it was the only proof I existed. The sky spun. The world narrowed. I remember one sound cutting through all of it. A tiny drone buzzing above my head. Its camera locked on my face, my cuffs the Deepwave coordinate stamp on the sand. It auto-uploaded. Less than 60 seconds. Shaky, silent, brutal. The woman at Deepwave. By the time they put fluids in my veins again, that clip had already spread from some kid's controller to a local news station to a regional feed to national TV. Strangers were saying my name like a prayer and a hashtag. Naomi Carter survived. Deepwave cover-up. Truth doesn't sink. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. The networks wanted exclusives. The agencies wanted deniability. The suits wanted to know exactly how much I remembered. Then Internal Affairs sent Grant. Gray hair, tired eyes, a suit that fit too well for politics. He didn't do the fake sympathy act. He walked in with a GoPro doc and said, "We caught something. Tell me if this is what I think it is." We watched together. Deck, chains, his voice, my sentence, the kick, my body vanishing into water. Then fragments, logos in the reflections, vessel IDs, radio traffic tagging Helion as an active ops partner, not some distant contractor. The metadata lined up like a firing squad. "Someone tried to wipe all this within minutes," Grant said quietly. "They almost succeeded." "Helion," I said. "Not just Helion," he replied. "Somebody inside our house. Here's your mid-video reminder, stick around because what happened next will blow your mind." We pulled the raw stream off the emergency cache. I named the package Ghost Finn. Part petty, part prophecy. We thought if we could secure it, route it properly, the truth would be bulletproof. We were wrong. Within hours, our server lit up with intrusion flags. Files vanished in front of us. Every time we locked something, a mirrored process unlocked 2 more. Grant slammed the manual disconnect, but by then, half the data was gone. "They're inside already," I said. "Someone's deleting our evidence from your side of the wall." He didn't argue. That's when I called Leroy Jenkins. If you've been around long enough, you know that name. Old reporter, voice like gravel. Career built on printing what powerful people told him to bury. They'd shoved him into the margins, but they hadn't shut him up. He listened without interrupting, then said, "Okay, we show them everything. Raw, no narration, no spin." We set it up. Extra backups, encrypted relays, Ghost Finn seeded out to more than one place. And Helion, or whoever was holding their leash, sent a reminder that they still had teeth. It came into my apartment at 1:00 a.m. Black clothes, silent steps, gloved hand on the glass, suppressed pistol leading. I was already awake. Combat nap habits never leave you. I grabbed the knife I keep too close to my bed for polite company, hit the lights at the wrong time on purpose. He shot where my head would have been. I went low, kicked his knee, slammed my shoulder into his ribs, drove the blade along the seam of his vest. We hit the ground, rolled his mask, ripped free. Marcus Hale, the man who once pulled me from the ocean in Somalia, laughing as he called me Ghost Finn, for the way I moved through the waves, the one I trusted to cover my back. "Yeah," he said, teeth, red eyes clear. "That happened." "Why?" I demanded. "Because they fear you more than they fear me," he said. "You make people believe justice might be real. Nobody in this business wants that." There was a flash drive strapped inside his vest, sealed, labeled in a neat, cold font, Project Surge. I didn't let him finish the job he came for. I'm not here to make that killing sound noble. It wasn't. It was survival, and it was personal. When we decrypted Surge, that was the twist that flipped the whole story. Deepwave wasn't an accident. It was a proof of concept. Surge was Helian's blueprint for deploying engineered toxins, biohybrids, and disposal protocols into poor coastal communities and calling it infrastructure. And scattered through the internal notes were references to early enhanced aquatic resilience testing on candidates who matched my profile. Not legally consented, not fully briefed, not disclosed, just assumed acceptable risk. So no, I wasn't born special. The country I served just quietly tried to tune my body to survive its mess. If it were you reading that about yourself, what would you have done? We knew then exposing one bad cop would never be enough. This was bigger. Contracts, politicians, whole agencies laundering their guilt through Helian systems. Jenkins looked at me like a man signing his own warrant. "We dump it," he said. "All of it." We staggered the releases. First smaller channels, independent journalists who still cross-check, whistleblower boards, encrypted mirrors offshore. Then that one glorious chaotic moment when a broadcast switch misrouted and our raw GoPro feed hijacked a national network in real time. No commentary, no panel, just Ridgewell's words, "My fall the sea." Americans watched, heard him sneer, heard "the law is me," watched him kick. You cannot unsee a man laughing while he throws a bound woman into poisoned water. They dragged him into court. Cameras, crutches, carefully placed bruises, Helian lawyers at his back in clean suits pretending they barely knew him. My turn. I stood, took off the bandage on my neck, let the scar talk first. "The evidence is my body," I said. "The footage is yours. You paid for the camera." We played the tape. When he saw it on that giant screen with no way to deny the angle, Ridgewell broke. "I was following orders," he shouted. "You think I did this alone?" There it was, out loud. But the machine moved faster than the gavel. That same night they started editing me into someone else's monster. Clipped footage, out-of-context audio, articles calling me unstable, radical, dangerous, Helian-friendly outlets framing Deepwave as uncertain, calling Surge leaks foreign disinformation. I went from victim to icon to liability in less than a week. Jenkins caught a letter on day 10, small envelope, no return address. Inside, something dusted invisible. Old-school poisoning. By the time I reached him, his lips were purple and his jokes were slurring into nothing. "Dying for the truth," he whispered, "still beats living as their pet." He coded his last fail-safe right into his own death. Because when he flatlined a timed release triggered on nodes we'd buried worldwide. Medical logs, contract scans, video of kids coughing black tagged to Deepwave dumps, Project Surge memos with signatures, everything. That was the beginning of the Helian collapse. Facilities raided, some mysteriously exploding before inspectors arrived. Executives in cuffs on foreign soil. Papers couldn't call it fake anymore. There was too much. Too many angles, too many mouths. And while the world argued whether I was a saint or a traitor, I went back to the water. I texted one number. "Grant. Send him to me," I said. I chose the meeting spot. Same coordinates where they'd dumped me. Deep wave, dead waves, black slick water. Ridgewell showed up, desperate hands shaking around a gun he no longer had the right to hold. Helian had cut his leash, but he still thought someone upstairs was going to bail him out if he did one last dirty job. "You set me up," he yelled across the gap between our boats. "No," I said. "I just stopped dying on schedule." He tried to bargain, blamed orders, blamed me, blamed the system that built him, then disowned him. "You've already ruined me," he shouted. "What else do you want?" I looked down at that churning, glowing scar of an ocean. "I want justice," I said, "and justice remembers." The water moved. One of those twisted sharks rose under his hull, drawn by the fuel, by his blood, by whatever was left of the surge system we hadn't fully broken. His boat rocked. He slipped. "Carter, help me!" he screamed, clawing at the splintered edge. He reached toward me like I was some lifeline he was owed, like we were even. I watched him thinking about every black kid thrown away by a system that later said, "We'll investigate ourselves." Every protester smeared, every body mislabeled as threat instead of victim. "Tell them," he gasped, "tell them I was following orders." "If that was enough for me," I said quietly, "they'd have buried me and you'd still be laughing." He went under. The sea closed. No jury, no sentence from a polished bench. Just the water he trusted to dispose of people doing exactly what it did to him. Now here comes the controversial part, and I want you in the comments for this. Was that justice or revenge? Because the next morning, Helian's people and their friends in power did exactly what you'd expect. They took the explosion, the shark, the Deepwave station, and they cut a whole new story. Heroic officer Harold Ridgewell killed while investigating terrorist Naomi Carter in Deepwave incident. They stole even his guilt to use against me. I holed up in an abandoned church for a while after that, staring at his face on the news like he hadn't been the man with his boot on my chain, listening to my name wrapped around the word terrorist. like I hadn't dragged their crimes into the light. I wrote in an old notebook, "Justice does not drown. It just waits." Grant found me again. "You're public enemy now," he said. "But they can't plug every leak. Surge is out, deep wave is out, people see it. And when they get scared," I said, "they mutate." We traced Surge's remaining signals north. An ice facility in Alaska with helium stamps half scraped off. New logos already stenciled over old crimes. I went in dark. What I found, no conspiracy blog could have dreamed it clean. Rows of tanks, creatures not fully sea, not fully human, twitching in chemical sleep. Data logs showing field trials, not just offshore but inland. Water systems, clinics, food aid. And one more file, my name buried in an early compatibility trial list. I wasn't just a whistleblower. I was one of the first quiet test beds. You still with me? Take a breath. I blew. Their servers grabbed a hard drive, nearly froze to death on my way out. Got pulled from a crevasse by a hand I thought belonged to a ghost. Jenkins again, or the contingency he prepared. Doesn't matter. What matters is the drive made it back to people who still remember how to feel shame. That drive hit networks around the world. Combined with Jenkins' failsafes, it was enough to snap Helian's spine. Their stock free fell. Leaders got dragged from private jets and marble lobbies. Governments scrambled to hold hearings they should have held years ago. Everybody celebrated. For 10 minutes. Then I got an anonymous email. Deep wave was rehearsal. Real target is on land. The attachment: Surge city map. Nodes near major urban centers. Contracts with fresh entities. The same poison, new bottles. And at that point I understood something ugly and simple. You can kill a company. You cannot vote out greed. So when that black helicopter came down over the Georgia shoreline, again kicking up sand around my boots, I didn't run this time. Old SEAL insignia, no Helian logo, just a folder marked Project Rise. The man inside looked me in the eye. "Surge tech is loose. Black channels, private buyers. We need someone the lies didn't break." "You want an assassin?" I said. He shook his head. "We want a witness who bites back." On the briefing screen, red dots all over the world. Labs, ships, bunkers. None of them branded Helian anymore, but I recognized the code structure. Same bones, new skin. "I won't give you the op details. You know enough. I will tell you this. I put the uniform back on by choice. Not for a flag this time, not for a paycheck, not for a speech. For every person who never got their footage seen. For every town that never trended long enough to matter. For Jenkins. For my mother whose grave I circled with sand from deep wave and promised, justice is not given, we take it. So let me leave you with this, because this is where it stops being my story and starts being ours. Was I wrong to let the sea take Ridgewell? Was I wrong to work with ghosts and government to take down Helian from the shadows, instead of trusting a process that had already tried to erase me? When a system lies, poisons, covers up, and weaponizes your image against you, does it still get to define what legal looks like? If it were you, thrown into toxic water on camera, called a liar, then crowned a hero, then branded a terrorist the second your truth cost the wrong people money, what would you have done differently? Say it honestly, not politely. Drop it in the comments. Tell me if you think what happened to Ridgewell was justice or just another cycle of violence. Tell me if you believe a government that signed off on Deep Wave and Surge has the moral right to decide who is a criminal for fighting back. And if you've ever watched someone get smeared for telling the truth, at work, in your community, in your own family, share that, even if it's just one line. I saw it. Let other people know they're not alone. Hit, like if you think stories like this shouldn't be buried under polished statements. Share this if you believe evidence should outlive PR. Subscribe if you want more than safe narratives. If you want the messy, complicated human side from people who have actually been under the water. Because the ocean remembers, the cameras remember, and whether the system likes it or not, justice will rise.